Rightio, beautiful day here in Romsey. I'm catching up with Alistair McLean. Hello, Alistair.
G'day, Paul. Jim.
Good to see you too, and anyone that's wondering, it's 40 degrees everywhere else. Romsey, beautiful 20 degrees.
Always like this, Paul.
It is lovely, lovely weather. Yearling sales are on us and the likes, and I try and get the word out there, I suppose, educating people and the likes. One of those words that comes up a little bit, or three words, but more commonly known as OCD, raises its head around yearling sales. What actually is OCD, Alistair?
OCD is a condition that we see in horses, primarily in larger breeds of horses, but commonly in thoroughbreds and standardbreds, more commonly over the last 20 years, due to a number of factors, and the disease itself is what we call multifactorial. That is, there are a number of predisposing conditions that lead to the condition of osteochondrosis, OCD. OCD can be partly genetic, can be partly nutritional, and can be partly the way the animals are managed. So it is manageable from a owner's perspective.
So it is something that can be managed, but even the best management sometimes still can't stop it occurring.
Absolutely. I can vividly recall in Lindsay Park many years ago now, the first crop of God's Walk stallion, called God's Walk, came to Australia. Lindsay Park, his first crop of foals had a high incidence of OCD compared with the without fear foals who did not have this high incidence. So there's certainly a heritable predisposition to the condition.
So both lots of horses were raised on the same farm,
Yep.
everything was
exactly
the same,
other
than
they were by God's Walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting, yeah.
It is. Well, I think that's key. I think I want to try and break down some of the myths, I suppose, and educate people as far as standardbreds. And we're talking with standardbreds, but we might actually get a comparison with the thoroughbreds.
Yep.
Where does it most commonly affect a standardbred?
Standardbreds, it most commonly occurs in the hock joints.
Is there a reason?
In the stifle? No, it's just there's no known reason why it should occur in the hock, but that's where it occurs, and it occurs anywhere in the growing phase of the animal between 5 months and 20 months of age, so around yearling sales time. And there's certainly plenty of instances where horses have come in for preparation for yearlings, been perfectly normal, and yet one day they swell up in the hock joint and investigated, and it's got OCD.
And it
happens almost happens overnight clinically.
Yeah.
But presumably it's been building up for a period of time before it becomes clinically evident.
So if you've got a horse with a sales vendor, someone that's trying to sell one for him, and all of a sudden you get this phone call, you're not going to believe this horse has got OCDs.
Yep.
That is feasible and normal in a way.
Absolutely. That's, in fact, I would say most of them happen like that. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. That's incredible. Just quickly, the thoroughbreds, where do they get it in the hocks as well?
They get in the hocks, but also more commonly in the stifle joint. Not as common as the hock, but they occur quite commonly in the stifle joint.
Identification. You said there before about swelling in the hocks. Is that the best way?
That's the only way you can get it. Many times they're not overtly lame, but they get this soft swelling around the hock joints, and it's commonly called bog spavin. Spavin. Just excessive joint fluid in the joint.
My uneducated way of looking at this, I know the ones that I've seen it, you actually push on it and it actually will push your finger back out.
You can put your finger on either side of the joint and you push in one and it'll go out the other. It's just extra fluid in the joint.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and that's the main way
that's the main way you clinically diagnose it. But to confirm the diagnosis of OCD requires good quality radiographs.
Yep. Okay, and that comes, I suppose, to the next part, to how you actually treat it, I suppose, and how you fix it. I suppose the number one thing is to get it X-rayed and identified.
Get it diagnosed by X-ray. And then the options are to treat it conservatively, that is basically do nothing, change the management, slow down the growth rate, just check the feeding regime, that they're not getting too much feed for the amount of work they're doing. Interestingly, another interesting observation is that if you have two groups of horses, both fed the same, one kept up like chickens in boxes, very confined, and the other one in 20-acre paddocks, the incidence of OCD in the confined group is going to be much higher.
Serious.
So you need exercise, but on the other side of it, if you give them too much exercise, that'll predispose to developing it again. So everything's a balance, and you just must get that balance right.
So it actually
attempt to.
It nearly ties in with the yearling sales in a way, because that's when they come in and get boxed and the likes.
Often, yes.
If they weren't boxed, they would still potentially get the OCDs. It just may be a little bit slower,
more delayed,
delayed reaction in rearing its actual its head. The treatment you're talking there before about Lindsay Park and identifying those, and I'm tipping that was a few years ago.
Yes, that's a number of years ago now.
The treatment and how it is actually treated. You just said there before you go on to the next stage of it, some of them you don't have to treat. Is that?
No, some of them, if they radiographically look normal, there's no need to treat them. Just,
at all.
Just alter the
feed
management.
Yep.
And they may just settle down.
Okay.
If, however, on radiographs there's fragments in the joint as a result of the OCD, the optimum way is to remove those fragments before they cause further damage in the joint.
Yep.
And that's generally done by arthroscopic surgery, and there are a number of surgeons about the country who do that routinely with good results.
Yep. And that's that's the reason we're actually talking to you, because you are a surgeon, and going back again in time, back to Lindsay Park and the likes, I would imagine that the operations and the processes that you go through would have changed and evolved a lot over the years.
Definitely. In the early days, we used to do what we call arthrotomies. That is an open joint surgery. Cut open the joint, look inside it, remove the fragment, and stitch it all up again. Nowadays, with keyhole surgery, the same job is done inside the joint, but it's much more efficient and much less risk of complications.
Less invasive, which means...
Less invasive.
Less complications.
Yep.
And the prognosis for horses that either way, like the ones that don't get operated on to the ones that do get operated on?
The prognosis for OCD in hock joints is, we quote 60 to 80% do well. Do as good as they could have done if they had no problems. Now that means that 20 to 40% don't perform in the long term as well as you would like. But let's face it, 20 or 40% of any group of horses aren't going to come up to owners' expectations.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of the time that expectations is that this is a good horse, has the OCD surgery, doesn't go on, so people say, but they can actually get that wrong. That's one of the joys of purchasing yearlings and the like. It can always be a bit of an issue. If you are a buyer going through yearling sales, which you are, I mean, you wear quite a few hats. You actually haven't got one on at all, but you wear quite a few hats in this. Would you hesitate in buying a horse with OCDs?
No, I would not hesitate, providing I was aware of the problem and I made a judgment that the risk was worth it. I'd be more than happy to purchase a horse with OCD that's had OCD and been effectively treated.
Recommendation for people buying, like obviously consult with a vet or a horse person, or mainly a vet?
They should consult with their vet to read the report that should be available at the selling company, and make a correct judgment call on it on their behalf. Yeah.
It's very good. It's one of those, as I said, every year it raises. It's a funny thing. We don't seem to hear it through the middle of winter and lead up to summer, but every time when yearling sales come around, and I appreciate your time, Alistair. Just so people are aware, you are a surgeon. You've operated on these for many years. People that may not be aware of who you are, but you've got a long history in the operating field with the OCDs.
Yes. We at the University of Melbourne, where I spent most of my career teaching large animal surgery. We have been doing OCD surgery since the 1970s. Yes.
If you go to a sale, you see a horse with an OCD, would you hesitate?
I would like to see a report or see current radiographs of that. And if it was suitable to me, I would not hesitate recommending my purchaser to buy it.
Alistair McLean, thank you very much for giving me 5 minutes of your time on this beautiful day here in Romsey.
Good to see you, Paul.